Hello, colleagues. Gosh, that was really quick how you went quiet. Amazing. My name's Dharmendra Kanani. I have the pleasure of moderating this momentous event. But I'm simply letting you know there's going to be a slight delay. We're waiting for the Prime Minister, obviously, to arrive. And out of respect, duly, we shouldn't start the event without his presence. So bear with me, bear with us, and bear with each other. We've opened every door, air conditioning's on full, but we didn't expect such a big full house. Obviously, we should have. But do mingle, speak amongst yourselves, and then we'll start as soon as the Prime Minister's arrived, okay? Sorry about that, but that's the deal. Thank you very much. So, colleagues, Prime Minister, welcome. What an entrance. And well, obviously, you're going to forgive him because he's a busy man and he's got lots to do today. But thank you for joining us, Prime Minister. And what we're going to do is first have a conversation about your new social model. You know, it's interesting that at a time when the world is so turbulent and so unpredictable and we are feeling, miserable with what's going on, it's so nice to be able to have a conversation about this, a social dialogue, the ability to think about how a government can reset its social contract. And that's what, in effect, Greece has done. After a decade of turbulence, both economic and social, like a phoenix from the ashes, Greece has produced its own new social contract, a social dialogue. And in that respect, what it does is resets expectations and balances responsibilities. It's good for workers in terms of better wages. It's good for trade unions because they're able to work closely, effectively, and easily with employers. And employers have predictability and strength. And government, in that respect, has a model that what we all know through through research, what Greece has done is create the kind of model that seeds economic sustainable growth, but human-centered in that respect. So it's it's a great pleasure to be able to have this conversation. For those of you who are not aware, we last year launched this, which is, that's why we're so pleased with this actually, because we brought out a report on a renewed social contract for Europe. And what Greece has done is really actually is embedded in this report. So those of you who are interested, please go to our website and get a copy of a renewed social contract. On that note, what I'd like to do is invite Roxana Minsad. Thank you for being with us, Roxana. And also welcome back, because it's been your second entry with us. And look forward to hearing what you have to say about this particular model. Thank you.
Yes. Many thanks, Prime Minister Mitsotakis, dear Minister Dianiki, President Poland, and dear colleagues, distinguished guests. We thought about this event a bit together, I must say that. Social dialogue in Europe needs moments like this moment, where we get inspiration, where we acknowledge, where we see what is possible when social dialogue functions concretely. Of course, we have very important European tools that, from the European level, shape policies at national level. And the Minimum Wage Directive is such an important tool. And member states present plans where they, of course, offer the best avenues towards expanding collective bargaining coverage. And this is important, and we monitor it, and we talk to governments. But beyond that, what happened in Greece last autumn, last November, with the agreement, the tripartite agreement between the social partners, the employers, the trade unions, and the government, is a moment of rebuilding trust and the social fabric that was necessary, I think, not just for Greece. Of course, our Greek guest will elaborate on that. That is necessary for Europe because we have so many challenges that we are facing. Beyond the geopolitics of it, we're looking at the technological transformations of our society, of our companies, of our workplaces, which affect workers, which create opportunity, and they create, of course, fear and vulnerability. And how can we respond? We, of course, respond with our policies, with our budgets, with action, but it's also a question of trust and of dialogue in society. And social dialogue is extremely important, especially as we enter the era of artificial intelligence and superintelligence, and we'll see what next. So, looking at what Greece has achieved, I need to first congratulate you, Prime Minister, and Nikki, and the whole of government, and congratulate the social partners in Greece, because I can imagine, knowing Greece's journey, knowing that how difficult it has been, knowing where you start from, a coverage that is, not at all one that is very strong, that it wouldn't have been easy to really put yourselves at the same table and really agree on a path forward. And I think that Europe needs to really thank you for this moment of inspiration. We have our own pact for social dialogue that we have signed last spring with our European social partners. And it is important that under this umbrella, we are working to consolidate trust at European level and the social dialogue at European level. But again, the inspiration that we get from a part of Europe that is not maybe traditionally known for a strong social dialogue is really important. With that, I will only say that the Commission is a partner for you, for your government, in implementing the best solutions and the best initiatives in our social policies. It is important that while our drive for competitiveness and security is maintained, we are also able to look in the eyes of every worker, of every self-employed, of every owner of a micro-enterprise, of a small company, of a bigger company, and tell them that we've got their back and that we are able to navigate all these changes and opportunities together. And whatever budgetary, fiscal, economic, social policies, legislation we put on the table, we put it by together consulting and having an honest, open, and strong dialogue. So many thanks. Congratulations again, Greece. I celebrate you and Europe celebrates you. It is really important for all of us what has been achieved through the signature of the tripartite social agreement.
Thank you. Thank you. Fine words, and I'll come back to you in a moment. But what I'd like to do now is play a short video that brings to life what's the actual agreement is really about. So if we could have that on now, please. Thank you. Here we go.
Επαναφέραμε. Οι συλλογικές συμβάσεις είναι αυτές που σήμερα δίνουν μεγαλύτερες αυξήσεις στους εργαζόμενους σε συνεννόηση εργοδοτών και των εκπροσώπων τους από τον κόσμο της εργασίας, όπως ακριβώς επιτάσσει η σχετική ευρωπαϊκή οδηγία.
Τι σημαίνει για τους δυνατότητα επένδυσης στους εργαζομένους με προοπτική, περιβάλλον με ξεκάθαρους κανόνες που διευκολύνει και ενισχύει την ανάπτυξη και την καταπολέμηση του αθέμητου ανταγωνισμού.
And I really want to congratulate Greece on this historic signing of the social agreement with social partners, not only for what it means for the Greek labor market, for the workers, for the companies, for the country, for the atmosphere of the social dialogue between social partners in Greece, but for setting inspiration.
There's no better protection for workers and no better support for the economy than collective agreements.
Most importantly, the national agreement paves the way to significant wage increases.
I'd like to express my great satisfaction about the collective bargaining agreement that was also ratified by Parliament. Greece was always a laggard when it came to collective bargaining, but I think we've made a great step forward, and I'm very much looking forward to the new sectoral collective bargaining agreements that will be signed.
That we have action on collective agreements, that a member state, and in this geography, is able to create this level of trust between social partners so that to reach such an historic moment.
We are truly thrilled for, I would say, the very close cooperation, and we're grateful for the support of the Commission in our combined effort to enhance social dialogue.
Thank you. Feels almost too good to be true, doesn't it? When you look at that, it's that rosy picture of loveliness and harmony. But, Greece, after that moment of turbulence over the past decade, has pulled through. And, who'd have thought? But they have. And I know that the Prime Minister here has been kind of, had great accolades because of the kind of leadership he's shown. And I'm not just being, sycophantic here, but it's very clear that you've actually been persistent, diligent, and pushed through reforms that created an economy that is actually gone from zero to hero in a short period of time. Colleagues, we've been surveying citizens for many, many years. We have a citizen engagement lab, and through our Voices for Choices work, we surveyed young people in 6 major economies. And it's interesting what young people had to say. And when asked about living conditions, wages, the number one priority for young people in Europe at the moment is fair pay. Most of them do not believe they get fair pay. And only 20%, and so I'm talking about a fifth of the young people and population in Europe believe that their wages are aligned with what they do. So there's a real disparity and expectation from the future generation of Europe that they want fair pay and they want fair rights, if you like. So it's important that we bear that in mind, that these are 16 to 30, 25-year-olds who feel that this is not happening right now across Europe. It's good that Greece has paved the way, if you will, for a different social model. Roxana, if I can ask you that, obviously this is Greece. It's a certain population size, and it's actually pulled through. What does it say for the wider European policy landscape in the fact that you're bringing out a piece of legislation, the Act? How will social dialogue and collective bargaining feature as a part of that?
In the Quality Jobs Act, we are preparing a new tool, the Quality Jobs Act. We are debating it now with social partners, and we are looking at a number of topics like AI and subcontracting in some sectors where, like construction or agriculture, I give some examples where, because you have very long subcontracting chains, many times the working conditions of some of the workers are really poor, and some of them even are being abused. So looking at these 2 dimensions only, we think that the social partners will have a very important role in of course, not just awareness on the rights that workers have, but it's also about connecting the situations that they are identifying with the labor inspectorates, with the authorities that are able to take the measures. I've visited, for example, I've been in parking lots in the transport sector, which is also a sector where we see a lot of precarious working conditions. And I've been in parking lots across Europe seeing the working conditions of drivers. And the best way to help these people know their rights, also be able to defend in the end their position in a labor market, was through the advice they got from a trade union network. It was the Fair Mobilität network that we saw in Germany. So it is really important to see what social partners can do in the sense of creating trust, of connecting legislation with the beneficiary, and we will try to emphasize and to stimulate this role with the Quality Jobs Act as well. Of course, there's the other part of the story as well, working with employers. It is very important in the age of AI, for example, that we acknowledge that we don't have all the answers. And many times it is very important when we want to create trust for the adoption of AI tools in smaller companies, in some geographies, in some industries, that employers and trade unions are able to talk to each other and find the best adoption, deployment of AI tools possible, but also in a way that protects and empowers workers and augments, of course, their capabilities, but doesn't create additional burden or pressure on them. So there's a lot of role and scope for social dialogue in the Quality Jobs Act.
Do you think, given what we see and what's happened, which is quite historic in Greece, do you see that being able to be pushed across? Is Greece the pathfinder? And do you see, for example, France adopting a model like this?
Well, I'm looking at, rather the best performers and I wouldn't say worst performers, but you need to understand that, we have countries with a stronger tradition of social dialogue and stronger social partners.
Yeah.
France is a country that, has strong social partners, really. Of course, how well the dialogue functions, ask me, because I travel to each member state. Sometimes I can meet the social partners in the same room. Sometimes, like in the Nordic countries, they come with the common, with a shared PowerPoint or presentation. They send the commission the same ideas. Other times, you meet them separately. So, no, message needs to be that Greece is an inspiration. Mm-hmm. Greece is a country with collective bargaining coverage that was 13%, or what was it before the agreement. Greece is a country that doesn't have necessarily that tradition that many say, you have to have a historic trust in society. You have to have it, otherwise it's difficult. Well, I think that it turns out that you can create, trust. Of course, it's not a work that is completed. You will have to continue to work with every sector, with every industry, with every sectoral agreement. It's important. But still, it shows us that in 2026, 2025, it is possible to relaunch social dialogue beyond the legality, the directives, the planning. It's a question of interaction between policymakers and the leaders of the social partners, and that it is possible in a country with no particular tradition in that direction.
Yeah.
So the inspiration is much more important when it comes from a country such as Greece than if it would have come from, let us say, the western part of European Union. It's much more relevant.
Thank you very much. And part of what I think this is me summating it, is that it requires leadership, ultimately. So on that note, Nikki, I'm going to turn to you, because in many respects, you've been the instigator and leading this whole movement. And it's, power to your elbow, as the Scots would say, that you got something done of this level and scope. Everyone will be wondering, how did you do it? Where did the idea come from? And, what did it take to keep it almost like herding cats and making sure everyone was in agreement? Share your story of success.
So first of all, thank you so much for being here on a working day. It's truly an honor to have such a crowd. Thank you so much. And thank you to this amazing panel. And thank you, Prime Minister, for being here. Thank you to Friends of Europe for organizing this. As you know, Greece has gone through a major transformation as far as its labor market is concerned in the past 7 years. Unemployment has gone down by roughly 10 percentage points. Wages are rising, full-time contracts are rising. We have more than 470,000 Greeks who had left the country during the financial crisis who have returned back to Greece. So I would say the total landscape has dramatically changed for the better, with one exception. There was one element where Greece, objectively speaking, had a lot of room for improvement. And that was the percentage of coverage of employees by collective bargaining agreements. In addition, we had the EU Directive on Minimum Wage, which sent a very clear message to the member states: do something better to basically enhance protection through collective bargaining. And we had two routes, two ways, I would say, to do this. One was the easy way, to go and legislate in Parliament and say the Greek government will do 1, 2, 3 to achieve the objective to enhance social dialogue. That was the easy path. There was a second path, and that path was the most difficult path. And it was to try to build a new regime regarding social dialogue and collective bargaining through a consensus with all national social partners. I remember very vividly having a discussion with the Prime Minister about this. This is more than a year ago. I explained the two paths. I explained why I suggested we go the hard way. And he asked me a very legitimate question, which was, I don't know if you remember, Prime Minister, what are the chances of success? And I answered very logically, saying, if we think of this from a logical perspective, close to none. But I had the gut
Good for you.
But I had the gut feeling that there was a momentum here, that there was a level of trust that had been built, and it was worth the time and effort to at least give it a shot. So with his support, we gave it a shot. And we started having very long discussions. They lasted more than 7 months. We met discreetly. The beginning was announced that we were starting having a social dialogue. The Secretary General led the first part, Mr. Blapidis, on the technical front. And then very quickly, we moved to the principles of the social partners. And we met over and over again we literally put all the issues on the table. And I think
But you did this behind closed doors, didn't you? You managed to keep it
I
off.
set a bit strict condition.
Right.
And I said, we're going to do this in strict confidentiality. Okay. Not the fact that we're talking. The fact that we're talking was out there public. But the content of the discussions were completely private. Why? Because I truly wanted this to be a candid discussion. There was no way they would open up truly as to what their ambitions are and what concessions they could actually make if there wasn't a strict condition in place that this was fully confidential. And honestly, they kept the promise all the way.
Which is rare.
It's quite rare. For 7 months, yes, it's quite rare. And I think there were 3 elements that led to actually having an agreement at the end of the day. The first one, the level of trust. As EVP Menzato mentioned earlier, the level of trust was already there. So we were building on a momentum of trust. The second element is the fact that they were all truly willing to find an agreement. And they were also ready to make concessions. All of them, including myself on behalf of the government. And the third element is that purposely we did not start off this discussion with a text. We all together started drawing the board, all together. So we threw out all the issues, we negotiated openly, we started making concessions, and all of a sudden, after October, pieces started falling into place. And all of a sudden, end of November, we had an agreement which basically facilitated the conclusion of collective bargaining agreements, facilitated the extension of collective bargaining agreements, and also granted greater protection to workers after the expiration of a collective bargaining agreement. In practice, this has already led, in a few months after the ratification of Parliament, the ratification came back in February, we already have, in just a few months, more than 15% of workers in Greece who all of a sudden got coverage through collective bargaining agreements and wage increases.
Do you believe, or do you feel, is it too early to tell whether something's really shifted in the Greek culture of, bargaining and engagement and a sense of trust? Because it'd be interesting to know, if you were to do a barometer right now of the Greek population, has the trust quotient gone up?
Look, I think significant steps have been made in that direction. I'll give you a couple of examples. Since the passing of the law, I've had 2 new pieces of legislation. Before I even bring them to the cabinet meeting of ministers, I since have had very lengthy discussions with all social partners on all points. And I do this for 2 reasons. The one is because I truly think that in substance, the text that will result from these negotiations will be far better than the one I had initially prepared together with the service of the ministry. And the second is because this improves most significantly enforceability. They're going to enforce it in a much easier fashion when they have been part of the negotiation. So even for ministerial decisions where there's absolutely no, I would say, history of negotiating with social partners, I tend to do it because I think that the end result is much, much better. So truth be told, I think it's a lot about people. The dynamics right now are really, I would say, in our favor. But if I were to make a confession, I think that 2 years ago when I took office at the Ministry of Labour, never had I thought that the force of social dialogue would have been such in my term at the Ministry of Labour.
Nikki, thank you. I hope everyone's listening here. I know we've got a very large Greek population, but I hope through your television or whatever, other leaders, political leaders, are listening to what Nikki's saying. It's exactly what we say in our renewed social contract, that best policy making is when you actually consult those who are impacted. And actually, the brain, it doesn't sit within government. And if you treat your walls as porous and actually involve people that are going to be impacted, you get better policy. So thank you for leading the way on that. And we wish you luck. And we'll see, hopefully we can do this in a year's time and see where you are. Let me hand over to Seamus. Seamus, thank you for being with us. This is kind of sounds like halcyon. We're all rosy in the garden. From your perspective, you are the president of the European Economic Social Committee. How does this resonate for you in terms of the implications of social dialogue for Europe across the board and the role of the civil society in particular?
Well, may I begin by saying, dear Prime Minister, and thank you for being among us and hearing this discussion. And of course, I've met Executive Vice President Menzato, and I've had the great pleasure of meeting Minister Nikki earlier on in the play. So it's a pleasure and an honour to be here in this discussion. And bearing in mind we have a Greek presidency in the not too distant future. This is all part of it. But coming back to the matter in hand, I'll come to you in two parts. As president of the ESC, we've been promoting social dialogue, social partnership, all through our opinions. On a personal level, I had the great pleasure of being involved in the early days of social partnership in Ireland, which also went through a rather tough period, as you will remember, not too long ago with the financial crash 10 years ago. The major issue affected us then, as you know as well. And I remember being in Athens 10 years ago when we were both, I think, suffering quite a lot as a result of that crash. And in those early days of social partnership, we discovered, and as we are finding across Europe, which is your question, where you have social partnership linked to social dialogue, it works. It works because it builds, it's not just the final document, which everybody's trying to get to, it's the trust process. Because you've found, Nikki, in your minister, you've been trying to get the negotiations going behind closed doors, etc. Because a lot of things have to be said, and they need to be said in an honest, transparent way, and that begins a process of trust. Because if you don't have trust, then you fail in a whole range of economic policies. Government fails to get their policies through. Unions are dissatisfied. Social partners are dissatisfied. Nothing is working. But the process of trust brings all that together, which is what Executive Vice President Manzato has just been saying. The second thing, I suppose, to say that in the ESC, we have really worked very hard, and this is why we see it now as part of the Commission work programme, to bring social dialogue, social partnership into a very prime place. Because if it is there, if every country follows it, as you are doing in Greece, and you are to be congratulated, we then we bring in citizens, we bring in communities, we bring in workers, we bring in a whole range of people who then get used to a kind of infrastructure. And that infrastructure is actually more valuable sometimes than even the document at the end. And of course, it does fit in with Principle 8 of the European Pillar of Social Rights. And it means practically you are giving voice to that principle, which is really essential to the smooth building of a Europe that we all want to build collectively.
Wouldn't it be good if the Commission also operated in this way?
Sorry?
Wouldn't it be good if the Commission also operated in the same way? Okay, you don't have to answer that question. Don't worry.
Yes.
And also parliamentary committees. Parliamentary committees too.
But I have to say, and I have met the Executive Vice President, I think I've met 16, 17 commissioners at the moment during my presidency, and I am really taken by the commitment and especially the new work programme of the European Commission. So honestly, I'm even today we were at our plenary, which I was at,
okay.
And we had a fantastic discussion.
Sure, good. No, I hear you, but I think it would be great if Commission policy making, in some places it is, in other places it's not, and it would be great to see this model rolled out. But don't worry, you don't have to.
That's my dream, by the way.
Indeed, indeed. Colleagues, I literally have 5 minutes before I invite the gentleman in front of me to address you. Are there any questions that are burning in your bellies that you want to ask this amazing group of people? No? Okay, all right. So that's not a reflection of you. They're just wanting to hear from this man, that's all. So can I ask you all to just take your seats? And sir, please. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, Prime Minister of Greece, over to you.
Well, I guess I'll just drop my notes because this was a very inspiring conversation. Thank you so much, Mr. Kanani, for an excellent moderation. Thanks to the Friends of Europe for hosting us, and thank you all for attending. I know it's a very busy day in Brussels. I'm happy that we brought you some Athenian heat. I don't know how long it will last, but make sure you enjoy it. I'm really happy to be attending this event, Madam Vice President. I remember the very interesting meeting we had in Athens when we celebrated the signing of this national collective labor agreement between all those social partners and the government. And it was a milestone event for a country that, as you pointed out, did not really have a strong tradition of collective bargaining. And I think it came at a very, very interesting time, because if you look at the overall development of the Greek labor market, we have made, as Nikki said, a lot of progress over the past years. When we first came into power in 2019, we made fighting unemployment our number one priority. And it was only natural, because at the time we had an unemployment in excess of 18%. Youth unemployment was around 40%. 500,000 Greeks, many of whom actually chose Brussels, had left the country in search of employment opportunities abroad. And addressing this urgent concern was our top political priority. 7 years later, I think we have made remarkable progress. Unemployment is now around 8%. We have created 560,000 jobs. We have been able to reverse the brain drain tidal wave, so we bring back more people than actually leave the country. The Ministry of Labor is organizing amazing events across Europe, where companies and young Greeks join forces and explore the employment opportunities in our country. And of course, as unemployment has been coming down at a very fast pace, wages have also increased. We made our second term, when we won our re-election in 2023, very much about increasing wages. And we set very clear targets. Minimum wage, the statutory minimum wage was at 650 euros. When we came into power in 2019, we made a commitment that it would reach 950 euros. By 2027, we're at 920 euros now. So I think there's a pretty good chance that this target will be met and even possibly exceeded. We set a very clear goal in terms of the median full-time wage. We said it should reach 1,500 euros by 2027. We are already there in 2026. We wanted more full-time employment and less part-time unemployment. We're very much moving in that trend. We wanted better protection of employee rights. And one of our major reforms has been the introduction of a digital labor card, which digitally and in real time tracks employment time, including overtimes. And this addressed a major concern by workers that they were actually working overtime and they were not getting paid for the work they offered. So when we talk about fair pay, I guess the first question is to make sure that you get paid for the actual hours that you work. So we've made improvements along all those fronts, but as Nikki said, there was still a big gap, and that was the number of employees covered by collective labor agreements. And indeed, when Nikki first came to present this idea, I was slightly cautious, because in the past we had seen trade unions quite frequently being weaponized by political parties, very good at demonstrating, not very good at attracting very large crowds recently. Maybe this points also to the changing role of trade unions. But although the social partners managed to sit in a room, especially the Federation of Employees and the Federation of Employers, and actually reach what I consider to be a true milestone agreement, which is a framework agreement that was ratified by our Parliament, but essentially signed by the social partners and the government as a guarantor of what essentially was agreed, which was later enshrined into law. And it is very interesting how much progress we have seen since, because we've seen a number of sectoral agreements being signed, and these sectoral agreements always deliver better working conditions and, of course, better wages for the employees that are covered. And at the end of the day, we need to be aware that the first problem that all governments are faced with today is affordability. And when we talk about affordability, the answer should be more disposable income. What does more disposable income mean? It means higher nominal wages and less taxes. That's the way you build and you strengthen disposable income. So These sectoral agreements have been able to deliver better wages and better working conditions. And I do expect that this trend will continue. And I think we've reached a level of maturity where we can use these best practices and no longer point to them as exceptions, but try to make them the rule. For example, I was in Rhodes a few days ago, and there the local organization of hotel owners and the local representatives of hotel employees had actually signed an agreement that delivered significantly better compensation compared to the national agreement related to people working in the hospitality sector. And I think this is also becoming important at a time when employers realize that attracting talent is no longer a very easy job. Huh? It's easier to attract talent when unemployment is at 18%. You find lots of employees, but when unemployment is around 8%, you need to offer something better. And this is not just a better wage, but better benefits, better working conditions. And I'm happy that Greek employers are beginning to understand that their well-being is very much tied to the well-being of their employees. And I guess this is at the foundation of our social contract. And this is something that is really beginning to happen in Greece, especially in sectors such as hospitality. So my last point, and I'm particularly proud of that, is that this agreement was actually signed and ratified by a center-right government. This is not necessarily something you would expect. Usually it's the left that is always talking about employee rights, but it is a center-right government that was able to deliver an agreement that essentially benefits both employers, but primarily benefits employees. And at a time when, as you pointed out, young people across Europe feel threatened by major, upheavals in the job market, at a time when, AI is going to be a massive, massive challenge for social cohesion and will lead inevitably to significant labor market restructuring. The fact that, a government and but also the representatives of workers actually care about workers and deliver concrete results, I think is particularly important. We speak a lot about trust, and we all know that trust is a very elusive concept in its own right. But the only way I know to build trust is to make sure that you stick to your commitments and to deliver results. It may sound very simplistic, but there are not many governments in Europe that are currently doing that. I'm proud that as we sort of enter the last year of our term, we have delivered on our commitments when it came to wages. We have made significant changes in the labor market. We have put the protection of labor rights at the center of our labor policies. And we've been able to bring together around the same table employees and employers to sign mutually beneficial agreements. And again, it is important to note that these agreements need to also take into consideration issues such as productivity. For example, our new law determining the minimum wage, which will come into enforcement in 2028, makes this point very, very clearly, because we don't want to be put in a position where we offer maybe attractive nominal wage increases, but these are not truly supported by productivity. So the next challenge, I think, is also going to be how we use AI to enhance the productivity of our workforce, and making sure that we go through a massive, I think, reskilling and upskilling program to introduce our labor force, both in the public sector and in the private sector, to the possibilities that AI offers in order to make our employees much more productive. And as I read somewhere, I don't think that you're going to be, you could be replaced by an AI chatbot, but it's much more likely that you will be replaced by a human who knows how to use AI. So knowing how to use this technology
is absolutely critical, and I think it should be at the forefront, Madam Vice President, of our priorities. So, let me thank you again for inviting me. Let me congratulate the Commission on taking important initiatives and of highlighting this, I think, important achievement as a European achievement. It feels good for us, in Greece, 10 years ago, not many people said good things about Greece in this city. But due to the perseverance of the Greek people, I think we've been able to deliver, significant reforms. Our economy now is an economy that is producing very healthy primary surpluses. Our debt is being reduced at the fastest pace of any country in the history of the OECD, and at the same time, we're able to use our primary surpluses in a targeted manner to offer tax cuts and income supports to those in greater need to help them against this wave of inflation and price increases, which has hit all economies essentially since COVID. So I do hope that our story could be an inspiration for other countries, and if you ever need, advice on how to handle, delicate characters when you lock them up in the same room, you can just ask Nikki. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. That's it, colleagues. It's amazing that this man and his cabinet has rebranded Greece, and also, as you said rightly, from a centre-right government. You feel that social well-being and a social contract are mutually exclusive with a centre-right government. I hope and wish you well that you push and nudge your colleagues at the council to do the thing that you're doing. It's a real pleasure, and congratulations, colleagues. Thank you all very much.